we come from an academy in Manchester, in Harper Hay, North Manchester, and 14 years ago we were commissioned with the incredible privilege of building a brand new academy. It was part of the new Manchester Academy model. And on the very first day in 2010, when we had our brand new cohort of staff and we'd got a brand new £32 million building to move into, we asked the staff, so it's pretty much like this now, and we asked them what they were wishing for the children who were about to walk through the door. Year 7s, so 11 years old, they're about to walk through the door 2 days later. And this is what they came up with, and I won't read them, but if you imagine the population of children that we have now, which is 1,200 in the secondary school and 400 in our primary school, 1,600 children, we always say to the staff, if these things were to be realised for that entire population of children and their families, it would be revolutionary. And we also say to them, given the context of the intractable issue of disadvantage and its kind of stubbornness against all types of endeavours from all types of agencies, one day somebody or some agency or some collaboration are going to come up with some types of approaches that are actually going to realise these outcomes for the most disadvantaged children in England. And why not us? Why would that not be us? And that's how we start our year every year. But when we first started, we were not unaware of the incredible challenge that we were about to face. So just looking at the problem that we felt we would have to realise those 6 outcomes, we looked first at the index of multiple deprivation. I'm sure you're all familiar with the index of multiple deprivation and how it works, but we're looking at a population of roughly 70 million in this country, and that being divided into small lower super output areas of populations of 1,500 people, and then rank ordered in terms of levels of deprivation against 7 domains, and the domains are education, income, so on. When we looked at our particular area through that lens, what we realised straight away in terms of the lower super output areas, LSOA 3, the 3rd most disadvantaged in the country, 7, 9, 11, 13, 19, 21 and 23 were circled around our actual school buildings. So we knew that the statistics in those areas were telling us that there were complex and intense levels of disadvantage in the area, and we've not met the children or the families at this point, not really. And if you look at the map, I've used this old map because it's not literally not changed in the last decade, but if you look at the yellow area on the map, that's where our school and our partner schools are all situated. So the top 1% of most disadvantage. What does it actually look like? And this is what we asked ourselves, and I'm glad we did ask ourselves right at the beginning. How do those demographics, how does that statistical breakdown and that profile, how does that interpret itself into the lives of the children who are about to come and be part of our journey with a brand new school and a brand new academy? And given that the challenge to our school is the same as every school in Britain, that when it comes to external assessment, those children will reach the national average as a minimum. That was the challenge. And what we found is, this was based on a lot of research with Manchester University, but also our own contextual professional knowledge, that the risk areas, the 5 risk areas which would prevent us reaching the outcomes for the children were here, and you can see them there. You'll be familiar with some of these terms: adverse childhood experiences, adverse childhood environments, poverty, children with SEND, which were caused by social factors, and traumatised children. And what we did quite early on is to build a social mapping system. And the social mapping system looks like this. So in each of those 5 categories, there are 23 subcategories. And you'll notice in adverse childhood environments, health is one of those subcategories. Every single child in our school is profiled in this way. And what that gives us, if you can imagine, a forensic understanding of the social factors which will impact on our children and prevent them reaching the outcomes that we desire for them and they desire for themselves and their families desire for them. And you can see that in adverse childhood environments, physical health, if a child experiences any problems with their physical health as a cohort in this country and in all affluent countries, they will underperform. I mean, there'll be outliers, but that is actually statistically verified. Children who've been traumatised as a cohort will always underperform in this country. Children with free school meals will always underperform, we know that one. And so what our job then was to do is think of every single child like a kaleidoscope where with each turn, the pieces or the elements of disadvantage reconfigure into a unique profile for that child. And our job is to be able to reach that family and that child and mitigate those circumstances so that they can wake up with the same opportunities as every child in Britain. That would be the purpose of our profiling and our academy. And then if you look at this, we then found the situation where not only could we look at children as individuals and provide bespoke packages of support and mitigation around them, but also themes started to emerge. And I'm going to hand over to Vicky now, and Vicky will talk to you about homelessness and how that's arisen as a theme. It's been touched on already, housing and homelessness, and how that's impacted on our children. And just before I hand over this clicker to her, what I want to just tell you a very, very short story because it's so relevant to everybody in this room. Very recently, we had children sitting GCSE exams, and one child was brought to me. She was very, very distressed, and you know, sometimes you get that just before they sit their exams, they panic. And we were just chatting about what was going on, and she lives in a house which is extremely substandard, and so all the family sleep in one bed. So you've got the mum and 4 children in one bed because it's the only room that's not got mould and damp. It has got them, but not as chronically as in the other rooms. And in the middle of the night, the mum got out of the bed because, in her words, when I spoke to her later, it was all arms and legs that night. And when also in the middle of the night, the girls heard a sound and they woke up, the 2 older girls, and they looked down to see a rat on the mum's back, and the mum had startled in the night. And she just did this to them to say, don't frighten the boys, don't wake the boys. And when that child told me that story, I was already lining up things we could do in my head. And she said to me, Miss, I'm so scared of sitting on the bed and revising because in case the rat comes in the room and so on. So I was thinking she can come into school, we'll give her a tea, she can do this, and just lining up the kind of things we might do. But then I said to her, tell me the one thing that is making you most anxious at this moment. And she took me completely by surprise because she just said, and I was really expecting it to be around academic pressure. She just said, I'm so scared my mum is going to give up. And this is the 21st century. We are an affluent country, probably the 9th, I think, most affluent country in the world. And we have children taking on adult responsibility for their parents because of social issues, and that's wrong. And whoever we work for, you know, whether we work for health, we work for education, it is our absolute moral mandate to challenge that and to do something about it. And I'll hand you over to Vicky now.
So one of the issues that we're wanting to address is that issue around homelessness. So we've developed what we call our at-home partnership. So going back to the beginning, we work in collaboration with a number of other schools in North Manchester. We've got 20 schools in what we call our family zone collaboration. And back in the autumn of 2019, when we were meeting as a group of schools, we could all identify 3 or 4 families in that situation that Patsy has just mentioned. That young lady worried that her mum was going to give up in really, really substandard accommodation. So we thought, actually, we can all name 3 or 4 across 20 schools. This is quite a big issue. What can we do together to try and, alleviate some of the issues that are going on there? So we started to formulate a bit of a plan. We'd identified what we thought the problems were, and then by March 2020 we held we called the Hidden Homelessness Conference at our school, because at that time there was an awful lot of talk about street homelessness. Andy Burnham, massive campaign on that, a lot going on, but to many people the idea of families being homeless was kind of quite alien. I think people didn't necessarily realise the extent of that issue. Literally 2 weeks after we had that Hidden Homelessness Conference that Andy Burnham attended, COVID came and everything changed. So during that period we continued to support the families that we kind of knew about, but we couldn't kind of make some of those like steps forward that we were hoping to. Things changed obviously for everyone over those 2 years, and there was also a bit of a stay of execution for many families who had Section 21 eviction notices pending. The court stopped all eviction notices going forward. People kind of allowed to stay in their properties during that time. However, by the spring of 22, that had all been lifted, and we started to see then a massive influx of families being made homeless as the courts reopened and those started going back through. So we pulled together our at-home partnership at that time. And we'd already got to know Joe from Shared Health and the great stuff that was going on around homelessness. So Shared Health sit at the table at that at-home partnership. Along with our 20 families-owned schools, we have representation from Shelter, Citizens Advice, Mustard Tree, Tenants Union, but also Manchester City Council. We managed to get the right people sat around the table with us there, from temporary accommodation teams, private rent sector, housing solutions, so we could start to understand a bit more the extent of the problem, what could be done, and how we could support that. So how big of a problem is that for us? Well, as I said, back in 2019 when we sat with our colleagues and we knew we had 3 or 4 families who were in crisis, that was the tip of the iceberg. So we wanted to be in a position where we could actually go out to our families and say, let us know if you have a problem with poor accommodation, if you're at risk of homelessness, or if you're already in homeless or temporary accommodation. So in September, we sent one text out to our families at MCA at our high school, and if you've got children at school, you know what it's like. You get those group text calls, and very often you forget about them or ignore them, or we can send them out and ask for consent forms to come back and you'd hardly get any. But this particular text went out, and within 30 minutes we had 35 families had rung us and said, my house has got incredible damp, or we've got vermin, or I've got a Section 21 been issued, I don't know what to do next. And then over the course of from September to now, those have slowly dripped in. Every week 2 or 3 more families are getting in touch. They've kept hold of that text and they seem to have remembered it, or words getting out, and they're letting us know. So you look at the figures there, it's 93 families we've had just since September, just in our one school. And that's over 200 children. That's absolutely massive, the amount of children who are living in that poor accommodation. And we're classing that as homelessness. If you're in private rent and you're being charged £900 a month, but you've got damp, or you've got vermin, or the walls are crumbling, or there's water leaking in. We've had one family where the fire brigade actually condemned the property because of the way the water was leaking in. It was getting into the electrics and the plug sockets were sparking. Families shouldn't be living in conditions like that. Of those 93 families, 23 of them have had Section 21 eviction notices issued. Some have now gone through and been made homeless. Some are still pending. But by far the biggest issue for us has been the 48 cases where there's serious disrepair. So what are we actually able to do about that? So through that group, we're able to kind of understand a lot more about the problem and the processes and how we can support those families. Shelter delivered some incredible training for us around housing rights. So we really now understand what it means when a Section 21 eviction notice comes through, how long a person's got in the property, what they can do, what the local authority should be doing at that point to support, what our duties are as statutory professionals to actually report that. You know, a lot of schools, we don't really know what is our responsibility to do there. So now that we can understand that, we can start to triage many of those concerns as they come to us. It might be as simple as putting that initial referral in, or referring somebody into CAB because actually they've not got the housing benefits sorted and they need the benefits advice. So those direct partner referrals are amazing. We kind of know who to speak to and we know we can go straight to the right person. But when we've got a child studying or a family in front of us, we need to be able to put that ameliorative support in place. So we're able to do things like ensure they've got bus fare to get to school. That was mentioned on the video, you know, some of the things, the problems that those families face when they are in temporary accommodation or placed in hotels. We had one family this time last year while GCSEs were being sat, a young man who their family was in 5 different hotels throughout the 5 weeks he was sitting his GCSEs. So every day mum was having to call us and say, this is where we've been moved to today, can you let him know? This is, you know, we were needing to sort out taxis to pick him up in the morning because he needed to be there, sitting his exam at 9 a.m. the next day, didn't have time to get his bearings at this new hotel he'd been placed in on the other side of Salford, where he only kind of knows North Manchester. We're able to let our families come and use the facilities in our school, such as the washing machine or the cooking facilities. We had a family very recently in a hotel. You know, there's literally no cooking facilities there. Mum's struggling financially, but also the health impact that that's having on her children, having to try and pick up takeaways every day or, you know, just grab things that you can eat and go. They come in, use the cooking facilities in school, sit there. Kids could do the homework while mum was cooking and all eat together. But as well as being able to do those kind of ameliorative things, we want to actually affect some strategic change. So we welcome the opportunity that we get invited to events such as this. We've been invited to talk at the GM Homelessness Board recently, and yesterday we were talking to some people about the new homelessness strategy that's coming in. So we really want to be able to give a voice to those families, talk about what they're going through, and we can kind of see where things need to improve, and things are improving. So this is, I could have put a picture on there of all the bad things, the damp and the rats. I've got videos of rats in people's properties, but actually this is a family moved into this property just a week ago. They're a family, the young boy has not even started with us at high school yet. It come through one of our partner schools. This family's got 3 children and they were in a hotel and they were struggling. So they've started using our facilities, the washing, the cooking, like I just talked about. And then just over a week ago, they got offered a property. So we went with them to check it was okay. That's an actual picture of their bunk beds that got delivered. The little boys were absolutely overjoyed that they've now got their own room and the place to sleep. And they've got a little yard. That's not an actual picture of it, but very similar, a little kind of postage stamp yard. But you've never seen such joy on these children's faces when we got there, running out into the garden, talking about whether they were going to get a trampoline or a swing. So excited. But what that means is that young man then can start with us in September, hopefully on a bit more of a level playing field. You know, they've got a home, they've got somewhere safe, they've got somewhere they can cook. You know, we know homelessness is affecting, for us it's affecting attendance, behaviour. We see it in physical health, mental health, domestic violence. Very often it's linked back to poor housing standards or being homeless. So this is making a massive difference, and what we want to do is be in a position where in 5 years' time, looks like this young man, which was this time last year when they picked up the GCSE results, and he'd got a 9 there in his maths, and that's Mr Shahadi there, just stood to his right, who's his maths teacher, and you can see just the joy on his face, and the teachers stood around him. So that's why we need to be having that impact and making sure those children can actually come to school and those barriers are out the way. We can have the best teachers in the world, but if they didn't sleep in a bed last night or they can't even get to school, they're never going to meet those amazing teachers and be able to have those opportunities. Thank you.